What's up, guys? I'm LQ. This is the LQ Review. Thank you so much for joining me right here at my YouTube channel. This is where I talk about all the geeky, nerdy stuff that I love to talk about. Movies, video games, comic books, and TV shows. And right now, I would like to give you guys my review of episode 1 of the new adaptation of Stephen King's The Stand. Now, for those who do not know, The Stand is probably my favorite book of all time. I have read this and read this and read this. I got this book probably in 94-ish. Got this right before the miniseries came out. So I want to say I got this around 94. This is my favorite book of all time. It is, what is it, 1,100 and some odd pages? 1,135 pages of pure storytelling. Now, it's not magical storytelling. It's dark. It's dark storytelling, but at the same time, there's a certain level of optimism and a certain level of hope in it, especially optimism and hope through faith. And anybody who knows me personally, knows that I'm a Christian. I'm a Christian guy. I even teach at a Christian school. This book was a big stepping stone in my faith journey. A Stephen King book was a big stepping stone in your faith journey? Well, it was, and the reason for that was because this book made me more interested in learning about what some of the inspiration behind this book was. There's a lot of Christian inspiration. If you've read The Stand, you know there's a lot of Christian inspiration in this book. So this book definitely inspired me to go out and learn more about Christianity. Now, I'm not saying you have to be a Christian to like The Stand. Just the opposite, actually. I think anybody could like The Stand because it is such wonderful storytelling. But I'm just connecting it to how... I'm connecting this to how connected I am personally to the material. So I think it's relevant given the fact I'm going to be reviewing every episode of The Stand as it comes out. I personally am very connected to the material because it kickstarted a faith journey in my life when I was a kid that culminated into me actually following a career in Christian education. So The Stand it's left its mark on my life because this was the start in me wanting to learn more about what it means to have faith. Well, what was the first episode of The Stand like? First of all, I loved it. Now, it's got big shoes to fill. It's got huge shoes to fill. The 1994 miniseries, while it's definitely a product of its time, it did not have a very high budget, and it shows. It definitely had very television level of production values, and it shows. The casting was spot on. Gary Sinise as Stu, Molly Ringwald as Fanny or Franny. Randall Flagg, Mother Abigail, all the characters that they cast were cast perfectly. They even had Ozzie Davis play the judge. I mean, it was perfect casting in this movie. Rob Lowe as Nick Andros. I can't say enough about the casting in that miniseries. So this has big shoes to fill because the cast really brought us, even though the production values weren't there, the special effects weren't there was so much about this that wasn't there. The cast brought this wonderful level of professionalism to that original 1994 miniseries. And they really created something magical in that 1994 miniseries, something special. I still revisit it at least once a year. I just think it's a wonderful, wonderful example of what made for television entertainment can be. It was just really well done. But I love the first episode of this, and it's different than that original miniseries. This one is not telling the story of The Stand in a linear capacity. It's not telling it from the beginning to the end. There's flashbacks. There's flash forwards. It's telling the story in a Initially it felt complicated. Initially it felt like, wow, they're overcomplicating things by telling flash forwards and flashbacks and all this stuff. They're overcomplicating it. But once I saw once we got into the rhythm of the way the story was being told, I really felt comfortable with how they were telling it. Now this episode really, it was really kind of neat the way that they approached this episode. This episode they really told through the eyes of Harold Lauder and Stu. I mean, Stu's going to be the lead. Stu is, no matter what iteration you do of The Stand, I believe that Stu is always going to be the lead because he is the lead character. But so there were segments that were being told from James Marsden's Stu Redman point of view. But when they weren't focusing on Stu, they were focusing on Harold Lauder's character. And for me, that was a really interesting choice. You know, in the 1994 miniseries, you kind of just saw Harold Lauder as a bit of a outsider, kind of socially awkward, still kind of a successful person, right? He was getting stuff published. He was kind of successful. You know, I remember in the book, Harold Lauder was not always portrayed as well as he was in the 1994 miniseries, and we kind of saw that here, where he was bullied, he was ridiculed, and he had anger. He had a lot of anger because of the way people treated him. And I thought that shone through brilliantly. I really believe that they have already established Harold Lauder's character better than that 1994 series did. Whereas some of the other stuff they did, I didn't like quite as much. In that 1994 series, I really liked Campion's escape from the military facility. I thought that was done very well. And here, I didn't think that Campion's escape was done all that well. It was really told in segments, and it was told kind of backwards. And I would have preferred that they went in, they kind of adjusted that, and told that in a little bit more linear fashion, because that would really set up in my opinion, it would set up the series a lot better. But they really wanted to end the episode where the 1994 series began. And I see artistically it makes sense because they end the episode with the beginning of Captain Trips. Meanwhile, we've already experienced a lot of Captain Trips in the first episode. So they're kind of showing you where it began at the end of it. And they actually called this episode The End, which, you know, that's got a certain level of confidence to title the first episode of your season The End. But outside of Stu, outside of Franny, outside of Harold, we really didn't get any of the other main players. You know, we didn't get Larry Underwood. We didn't get Glenn Bateman. You know, we didn't get not Ralph. In this, I think it's Ray Bretner. I think they gender bended Ralph, so it's Ray Bretner in this one. You know, we didn't get any Nick. Didn't get Lloyd. You know, there's a lot of characters, a lot of big characters that we haven't even seen yet. We got glimpses of Randall Flagg. We got glimpses of Mother Abigail. Nothing too substantial here, but it shouldn't be anything substantial yet. They're still in the Captain Trips era. They're still telling the Captain Trips segment of the story. Once we get to the end of the plague, that's when they should really start leaning more heavily into the Mother Abigail, Randall Flagg section. So I thought this was really well done. I thought that this definitely leaned into the terror and the gore a little bit more than the original 1994 version did, and I definitely, you know, they were able to open up a lot more language-wise as well. You know, some of the language felt a little more authentic because it was a little more real to life. You know, how people would probably talk under these scenarios. It was definitely more there was more colorful language used, as Spock would say. So that is all the good stuff. The bad, I would say, would be, again, I already talked about Campion's journey. That was the bad, but I also think that, to some degree, you know, I think back to Die Hard with a Vengeance, 1995. That movie was supposed to come out before it did. They delayed releasing Die Hard with a Vengeance because of the Oklahoma City bombing, and they felt that it was just a little bit too real. It was a little bit too much. I don't know that a lot of people are going to embrace a Plague story like this right now. Being 2020 being the year that it is, and the year that it has been, I don't know that people are going to jump up and down and say, yes, I want to see a Plague story where 94 or 99.6% of the population gets wiped out. I just don't know that people are going to be jumping up and down for that. And that's too bad, because this is such a great story. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people are just going to be eating it up because it is relevant. But I don't know. I guess we'll see. There were parts of it that felt pretty real to me. And not that I think that the coronavirus or anything like that is capable of wiping out mankind or anything of that scenario. It just, we've been living a pandemic, and this is a pandemic that essentially wipes out mankind. And I don't know. It felt a little real, but that didn't mean that I didn't like it, because I have such love for the story, and I know where the story is going, and I know that at the end of the day, how little impact the plague, or not impact, but how little time is actually spent on the plague, that it's all forgiven. It's all forgiven. If you're not familiar with The Stand, stick with it. Once we get past the plague, that's when the story really starts. But this first episode was really good. It was really strong. It was stronger than I thought it was going to be. I had a lot of hesitations about redoing it, just because I have such love for that 1994 series, and I have such love for the novel. I did have hesitations about it, but those hesitations are almost completely gone now, because this first episode was done to such a high level of professionalism and quality. So I really liked it. What did you think of the first episode of Stephen King's The Stand on CBS All Access? Let me know in the comments down below. While you're commenting, make sure that you subscribe to my channel. I put out a lot of content. Want to make sure you're up to date with everything that I'm doing. And as always, thank you so much for joining me right here at the LQ Review, where we get to talk about all the geeky, nerdy stuff that we'd love to talk about. Until next time, we'll see you guys later.